This is the story of an orphan called Olanma. She escaped a death trap 7 days to her marriage. Olanma's early life in Umuoma village was marked by both beauty, quiet, and resilience. From the moment she began walking through the red-dusted paths of the village, the elders and neighbors watched her with an intensity that often accompanied significant events in the community. Her eyes were clear, her skin radiant, and her smile carried quiet confidence that drew attention without her seeking it. As she grew, her features sharpened with a grace that made people speak of her in a hushed admiration. Even as her body developed earlier than most girls her age, she never let the attention define her. She walked to school each morning with a younger brother, Iroko, notebooks pressed to her chest, and focused on her studies rather than the whispers around her. Simple clothes made by her aunt, Adora, never diminish her presence, and the villagers always notice her beauty whenever she passes. Olanma remained grounded in her world of learning and curiosity. Her intelligence sets her apart. Teachers often called her name for answers, and she responded without hesitation. That her calm demeanor impressed both educators and classmates. She read quietly during breaks, consistently ranked at the top during examinations, and handled the recognition with grace. Some classmates admired her, but her three friends, Adaku, Uju, and Nena, watched her with envy. They closely followed her successes, and their admiration was always tainted by the bitterness of comparison. They smiled at her achievements in public, but behind closed eyes, the resentment grew like a shadow over their friendship. Olanma, unaware of the silent tension, continued to treat them with kindness, sharing study time and snacks, hoping to preserve the bond they once shared, while her aunt quietly reminded her of the vigilance envy sometimes breeds. Tragedy touched Olanma's life early. When she was 7, her parents died within months, leaving her and Iroko in the care of Adaora, her mother's elder sister. Although Aunt Adaora had 2 children and a small business she manages, but she welcomed them without hesitation. The adjustment was difficult. Olanma and Iroko cried for their parents, while Adaora offered comfort in silence and steady routines. Olanma learned to help with chores, braid hair, and assist with household needs, developing responsibility and resilience. Her aunt balanced strictness with encouragement, emphasizing the importance of a good heart and a steady mind over superficial admiration. Despite poverty, the home became a place of safety, nurturing, and preparation for the challenges Olanma faced as she grew into a young woman admired for both her beauty and intelligence. However, beauty is often a burden. As Olanma enters her late teenage years, her reputation spreads throughout the village and beyond. Families with sons of marriageable age began to take an interest in asking subtle questions about her character and prospects. Even mothers of young men living overseas requested updates on her behavior and school results, viewing her as a potential daughter-in-law whose presence could elevate their family status. Meanwhile, her friends' envy became quietly hardened. Each award and recognition she received tightened bitterness in her friends' hearts. Olanma sensed a shift, but could not understand its depth. Life in Umuoma village, which seemed simple from the outside, had already begun setting the stage for envy and moral tests that would challenge Olanma's strength, judgment, and survival in ways she had yet to imagine. Her aunt's compound brought both comfort and subtle shifts that Olanma felt, but could not yet fully understand. The compound, composed of 2 modest mud houses with zinc roofs rattled in the wind, was small but alive with the rhythm of the family. Olanma's aunt, Adaora, spoke in measured tones, neither warm nor cold. She is a woman who seemed to weigh every word before speaking. Her husband, Mazi, Okorofo, carried a gentler presence, often seen with a hoe or palm wine gourd, reminding the children of the steady rhythms of work and responsibility. From the start, Olanma immersed herself in her studies, seeing education as a path out of poverty and toward a life that could honor her parents' memories. Her dedication drew attention in school, earning admiration from teachers and classmates alike, but it also became a silent source of tension among her childhood friends, Adaku, Uju, and Nena. They began to drift away subtly, whispering when she approached and walking ahead when she joined. Signs Olanma did not fully comprehend. She believed change was a natural part of growing up. Irrespective of her growing beauty and intelligence, Olanma remained humble and diligent. The teachers liked her because she answered questions confidently and showed genuine love for learning. Other students noticed her talent and poise, but few understood and focused on the discipline. Her friends, however, were keenly aware, and envy quietly accumulated in their hearts. They compared themselves to her achievements, interpreted every success as an affront. Olanma continued to treat them with kindness, inviting them to study together and share her knowledge, unaware that their feelings had begun to sour. Meanwhile, her aunt Adaora observed the subtle currents of envy from the comment they made against Olanma one morning as Olanma was coming back from the stream with her 3 friends. She offered cautionary advice about human nature without dampening Olanma's spirit. "Some hearts hide shadows behind smiles," she said softly, a phrase Olanma heard but did not fully grasp until years later, when the shadow of jealousy almost destroyed her. The villagers' attention on Olanma intensified as she entered her final years of secondary school. They discussed her results and accomplishments as though they were their own, spreading news of her excellence from compound to compound. Parents sought information about her behavior and character, hoping she might become their future daughter-in-law. Even though this attention brought pride to her family, it deepened the resentment of Adaku Uju and Nena. Each recognition she received seemed to widen the invisible gap between them, and their silence became heavy with unspoken bitterness. Olanma focused on her studies and family responsibilities, although she noticed the subtle changes but remained convinced that kindness and patience could preserve old friendships. She continued to excel academically, got a fully funded scholarship to the university, earning respect and admiration, while her friends' envy silently grew into a dangerous undercurrent that would soon shape the fate of all 3 girls. By the time Olanma prepared for her university education, the world beyond the village had begun to notice her. Offers of guidance, advice, and praise from teachers and elders sharply contrasted with the quiet scheming of her former friends. University life widened Olanma's world in ways that she had never imagined. She meets people from different states, backgrounds, and dreams. Despite the new faces and experiences, she remained grounded. She blended humility with confidence in a way that made people feel comfortable with her. She excelled academically, joined their department's tutorial group, and even represented her faculty in inter-university debates. Her lecturers respected her, students admired her, some envied her. However, in all of this, she never forgot where she came from. She wrote to her aunt every week, sent money home whenever she could, and made sure Emika was doing well in school. In the village, the mothers who once envied her parents now used her as an example when advising their daughters. Her success proved that poverty was not a permanent identity if determination was present. During holidays, when she returned home, young girls gathered around her at the market and asked her about life in the city. Older women stopped her on the path to compliment her beauty and asked about school. Young men who once ignored her now greeted her, as though they had always admired her. She handled all this attention gracefully. But her friends could not stand it. Nena avoided her completely. Adaku pretended to be busy every time she returned. Uju behaved normally on the surface, but her smiles did not reach her eyes. The envy that once hid quietly grew bold. They talked about her behind closed doors, complaining that life was too unfair and that one person should not carry all the blessings, while others struggled to gather crumbs. Their frustration deepened the year a young man from overseas returned to the village and openly showed an interest in Olanma. He comes from Umuoma village, a neighboring village to Umuoma. His mother had heard about her beauty and brilliance, so she encouraged her son to go to her hand in marriage. This became the final blow to the fragile loyalty of her friends. They believed Olanma had already taken too much from the world, and watching her attractive marriage proposals from successful men became unbearable. Their envy was no longer jealousy, but it turned into resentment. They convinced themselves that if she continued to rise, they would remain invisible in her shadow forever. That fear, irrational yet powerful, began to push them toward dark decisions. The tension peaked 7 days before Olanma's traditional marriage ceremony. The village was buzzed with excitement. Women gathered at her father's compound to assist with the preparations. Young girls helped to fetch firewood. Her aunt, Adora, moved about with unusual energy, as she wanted everything perfect for the girl she raised like her own daughter. Olanma herself glowed with calm joy that drew people to her. However, beneath this joy, a storm quietly formed. Her 3 friends, who were supposed to help in preparation for her traditional marriage, met secretly at different corners of the village, each carrying more anger than the last. They felt that Olanma's marriage was the final confirmation that life favored her more than anyone else. They convinced themselves that removing her would restore the balance that they believed was stolen from them. Their plan was simple but deadly: lure her away 7 days before the marriage, pretending they needed to celebrate with her then, plan with her on what role to play on the day of the event, so that things would go as planned on that day. So, when she comes, they would lead her into a trap that would cost her life by poisoning the food and drink for her. But fate interrupted their wicked intentions. On the day set aside for their meeting and plans, the morning sun stretched across Umuoma village, casting long shadows over red earth paths and mud houses topped with zinc roofs. Olanma wore a simple yet beautiful cloth, walked briskly toward the meeting place where her friends arranged their meeting Nena's house. Yet, a vague unease shadowed her excitement, a sensation that she could neither name nor ignore. The tension she felt among Adaku Uju and Nena in the days leading up to her traditional marriage lingered, marked by a subtle sharpness in their laughter and lingering glances that carried more than casual curiosity. As she approached a narrow footpath lined with palms and shrubs, a figure emerged from the shade. A strange blind woman sat on a woven mat beneath the towering Iroko tree. Her presence commanded attention, her figure wrapped in a calm stillness that felt older than the bush itself. In one hand, she held a slender walking stick, its smooth surface glistening as though it had been carved from moonlight rather than wood. In the other, she clutched a small mirror shaped like a hand fan, moving it gently against her face. Not quite fanning herself, but almost as if she were listening to the mirror instead of using it. Each slow motion carried an eerie grace, as though the breeze obeyed her rather than the other way around. And though her eyes were clouded with blindness, her face held a haunting familiarity. The quiet tenderness, the sorrowful strength of a mother who had once loved deeply and returned in spirit to watch over her child. Before Olanma could step past, the woman spoke with certainty, calling her by name and warning her that the path ahead was soaked in betrayal, insisting that she returned home immediately and avoided walking with anyone until after her marriage. Confused and trembling, Olanma felt the weight of the words, sensing truth in the blind woman's voice that went beyond the ordinary. Olanma obeyed, retracing her steps home with a mixture of relief and unease. She recounted the encounter to her aunt Adaora, describing the woman's small mirror, her urgent tone, and her insistence on caution. Adora's hands trembled as she pulled Olanma into a protective embrace, muttering prayers of safety and expressing gratitude for the intervention. Adaku, Uju, and Nena waited anxiously at their meeting spot, Nena's house, poised to execute the plan they had crafted. They had poisoned food and drinks intended to harm Olanma, counting on her temporary absence to carry out their scheme undetected. When she failed to appear, panic replaced confidence and frustration became palpable. That evening, Olanma sat quietly, reflecting on the days leading up to her traditional marriage, the subtle tension from her friends, and the blind woman's cryptic warnings. She realized that life, in its mysterious ways, had always presented dangers of envy, and yet fate had intervened to shield her. In that quiet room, she felt a profound sense of both relief and responsibility, recognizing that her survival depended not only on luck, but also on vigilance, moral clarity, and discernment. In a desperate bid to rid themselves of evidence, Nena threw the poisoned rice, yams, and drinks outside their house late evening that day. The consequences were immediate and shocking. Dogs, chickens, and goats that approached the discarded food that night till the next day collapsed and died instantly. Villagers rushed to the scene, horror etched on their faces, and witnessed the sudden, inexplicable carnage on their livestock. Nena, frozen in disbelief, watched the effects of their malice unfold, realizing too late the magnitude of their actions and the deadly power of their envy. The news reached Mazi, Obi, the village elder known for wisdom and fairness. He summoned the girl and her family members for questioning. Under the weight of fear and guilt, Nena confessed first, calling Uju and Adaku to join her. Together, They admitted to poisoning the food intended for their friend Olanma, revealing the dark motives fueled by jealousy of her beauty, intelligence, and impending marriage. The council and villagers listened in stunned silence, absorbing the gravity of their confession. Mazi Obi decreed that such malice could not go unpunished. The three friends were banned from entering Umuoma village ever again and were driven out under the watchful eyes of their neighbors. When the news reached Olanma and her aunt, they were struck by the depth of jealousy that had driven the plot. Relief and gratitude filled their hearts as they realized fate had spared Olanma, allowing her traditional marriage to proceed untainted. The day of the ceremony arrived. Olanma and her husband, Chika, traditionally dressed, vibrant and joyous, marked by music, blessings, and celebration. Olanma moved with grace and poise, her heart steady, her spirit light, and her life forever changed by the lessons of envy, vigilance, and the triumph of integrity. Olanma's early months as a married woman unfolded with a gentle mixture of adjustment, curiosity, and unexpected peace. Waking beside Chika each morning in their new home brought her a sense of stability she had never fully known in Umuoma, a stability shaped by his calm, patient nature. Though she had once walked through life burdened by envy, whispered jealousy, and the wounds of betrayal, she now found herself surrounded by routines that softened her spirit. Preparing meals, sweeping the compound, sharing quiet conversations with her husband, and reflecting on how far she had come from the turbulence of her youth. Yet even in this calm, she understood that marriage was more than affection. It demanded emotional intelligence, patience, compromise, and awareness. Her beauty, once a source of chaos and comparison, now blended into her life like a quiet shadow, no longer the force that dictated how others treated her. Instead, her humility, empathy, and sense of responsibility began shaping her identity within her new home. She observed carefully, listened deeply, and learned the unspoken norms of her surroundings. These early days prepared her for a new chapter that would test not her appearance, but her character. Adjusting to Chika's extended family required both emotional strength and social sensitivity. The compound was filled with cousins, elders, siblings, and visitors, each carrying their own expectations of harmony, hierarchy, and respect. Expectations Olanma needed to understand without overstepping. At first, she felt the familiar sting of scrutiny as subtle glances sized her up, evaluating whether she was humble, proud, naive, or cunning. But instead of shrinking or trying to impress, she navigated the family with quiet composure. She offered help without imposing, listened more than she spoke, and responded with tact when minor conflicts arose. Gradually, her presence softened tensions rather than escalating them. She intervened in small disputes, organized shared chores when misunderstandings arose, and helped calm disagreements between younger relatives. Her intelligence revealed itself not through lecturing, but through thoughtful suggestions that made others feel respected. Through this grace, she earned her place in the home, proving that influence is most powerful when rooted in humility, self-awareness, and emotional maturity. Still, she remained vigilant, aware that the same envy she had escaped in Umuoma could appear anywhere, even in households that smiled warmly. Beyond the walls of the household, Olanma's quiet strength began altering the wider village community. Elders admired her discipline and composure, mothers trusted her with advice, and young girls gathered around her with questions about education, friendships, and self-control. She volunteered at community gatherings, offered guidance to children struggling in school, and participated in women's meetings where health, hygiene, and personal development were discussed. She never acted superior, yet people gravitated toward her because she carried herself with the grace of someone who had known deep wounds and still chose kindness. At the same time, she remained deeply connected to her roots, maintaining contact with Aunt Adaora, encouraging her younger brothers, and sending help home whenever she could. Her life became an example of what is possible when pain is transformed into wisdom rather than bitterness. Even as she flourished in marriage and community life, Olanma never abandoned the warnings she had gathered along her journey. The blind woman's prophecy, the near betrayal of old friends, and the silent dangers hidden behind admiration. She remained cautious, measured in her words, and deliberate in her choices. As soon as Chika completed his new house project 6 months later, he prepared for their travel back to overseas. She embraced the change with gratitude, but also with awareness. New environments bring new forms of envy, new forms of temptation, and new forms of spiritual tests. Her life abroad brought admiration from strangers, curiosity from passers-by, and silent comparisons from unfamiliar faces, but she navigated them with the same humility she learned in Umuoma. She built friendships carefully, mentored young women, supported her family back home, and lived with the understanding that character, not beauty, not opportunity, not praise, shapes destiny. The moral lessons of her story became clear. Envy follows beauty, success, and favor, but humility disarms it. Wisdom is the shield that protects a person more than strength. True victory is not escaping challenges, but rising above them without losing one's heart. A woman's greatest power is integrity, not appearance. And lastly, destiny rewards those who endure life's storms with courage, discipline, and compassion. Please share this story, like and subscribe to this channel for more stories. Thank you.